doing, Met fans? And welcome to another edition of the Terry Collins Show. I'm John Arezzi, and joining me direct from Port St. Lucie, Florida, the former skipper of the New York Mets and analyst for SNY's Baseball Night in New York, and the man this show is named for, Terry Collins. Terry, how you doing?
I'm good. Great, John. How are you today?
Doing very well. We have another good one this week. The hits just keep on coming. Today's guest that you're bringing on, talking with TC, none other than Daniel Murphy.
Yeah, you're going to love him. You're going to love him. This guy is a baseball player from the get-go, watches the game intently, studied the game, was never out of any pitch during the ball game. I mean, you figure over a number of times, a lot of guys would come in off having a bat. They want to go in to see the video, what their swing was like. They spend time in there. Dan Murphy was on the bench. He was on the bench supporting his team. He could always watch those at-bats after when the game was over. So great teammate from obviously, maybe the best postseason performance of anybody I've ever seen. And I will tell you what, that 5 days or 6 days off before we had to get to the World Series, I think cooled Dan off a little bit, but I have never seen anybody perform on a level he did during that playoff series.
He was on fire, and we look forward to talking to him shortly, right, on the Talking with TC segment. But let's get to the Mets. It was an eventful weekend for them. They went out to the West Coast. They did fairly well, came back with 500, lost a couple of games to St. Louis opening up this series. But it was an eventful weekend on a few different fronts. And I want to get to Sunday's game first, and I want to talk about the pitcher, Jose Quintana, the first Mets starting pitcher this season to go deep into the game, completed the seventh inning. He's in the eighth inning. He gets the first couple of outs, and then here comes Carlos Mendoza, and you could see Quintana saying, stay where you are. But Mendoza comes out and doesn't make the change. He allows Quintana to finish the inning. Of course, Quintana strikes out the last batter, 1-2-3. Completes the eighth. I thought it was great to see both Jose wanting to stay in that game and the skipper allowing him to do so. What's your thoughts on what happened there?
Well, I totally support it. I think it's one of the things as a manager you've got to do to create those relationships with some of your players. I obviously there are some that I did that are famous in New York, but that is a situation that, hey, he said, look, I'm okay. I've still got it. This is my game. This is my hitter. I'm going to finish this inning. And you've got to let those guys, in my opinion, show you that they can do it. And then at the same token, when you do let them stay in the game, that bond that you have with this guy is solid. And now the next time that maybe happens, you may walk out and you're pretty sure that you want to take him out. And, he may say, hey, look, I'm okay again. And you're going to say, you know what? This is my call now. And you're coming out. And he'll understand because you gave him that opportunity to stay in the game. And I think it's a huge move. And I think it was great for Carlos.
Yeah, I totally agree. It was great to see it happen. It doesn't happen enough, I think, but it was great to see that synergy between manager, player. He got the job done, and it was wonderful to see. A couple other things that happened over the weekend. J.D. Martinez made his debut. He got 2 hits, including a double on his debut night on Friday. And he went 3 for 9 over the weekend. So what does it mean for the Mets now to get this guy in the lineup finally? And how does it boost the team as a whole, having a guy like J.D. with them?
Well, we've been talking, John, for a lot, and you and I talked before we even started these podcasts about the importance of, the development of your lineup and the construction of your lineup. And we said, you and I talked in spring training about the importance of having somebody protect Pete Alonso. I mean, and we saw it basically in Sunday's game, where they walked Pete with, that go ahead run to second base. Well, you get an offensive player like J.D. Martinez hitting behind Pete Alonso, who also is a 100 RBI guy. It changes everything dramatically. It may be a situation where, JD's hot and Pete's, in one of those funks where they're going to say, well, who do we want to face? Do we want to face Pete or do we want to face JD? And so I just think it really makes the lineup solidified. And I think he's going to be a huge addition. you know what? It's going to take him few more bats to really get in the groove of being back in the big leagues. But he's a great pickup, and he's going to be a big help as the season moves along.
Yeah, his professionalism, just his demeanor, his presence. You know, there's a guy in there now that is a stud, and then can come and deliver, and he will be delivering this year. So it was great to see him in uniform finally. And you got to give accolades to Pete Alonso. He hit his 200th career home run also, and now 8 home runs already for Alonso in the month of April. So he's on pace to have another great season. And is it wise for the Mets to go against everything that has been said publicly and maybe try to lock him up instead of playing this Russian roulette game they are playing with him right now for a guy that means so much to the city of New York and so much to the fans of the New York Mets?
Yeah, you know, John, that's a great response. But let me tell you something. The guy that is taking care of Pete's contracts and stuff, he ain't gonna let that happen. I'm telling you. This is not what Scott Boras does. So all Pete's going to do is go out and have another big year. And you know what? All we can hope for is that we're going to watch him hit his 400th home run in the Mets uniform. So, you know, we've got to just be patient. It's going to play out the way it plays out. But, you know, I'm very excited for him. He's he loves to be in New York, and he's become we all knew he was going to be a star player. We knew he was going to hit for power. But he's become a great teammate also, and that's going to make a big difference.
Yes, I believe so. And I had to bring something up because you were in the dugout, obviously, the entire 2015 season and for many, many years. Mark Vientos was called up this weekend. Starling Marte had to go on the bereavement list. He'll be coming back in a couple of days, and we certainly wish him well and everything that caused this. And Vientos is back with the Mets. After a great spring training, he expected to be part of the team, and it didn't happen. They got JD. Vientos was kind of the odd man out, and he goes into AAA to Syracuse, and he starts raking in the minors. And then he gets called up this weekend, and what does he do? I mean, he goes 3 for 4 this weekend, and he hit what a lot of people are saying is one of the most exciting walk-offs in many, many years. And when I looked at the walk-off, and then I looked back at the Wilmer Flores walk-off in 2015 with 2 young players who obviously want to be part of the organization and with the New York Mets, I had to get your take on it. So we're going to play both of those for you. The first one, I think we should go to maybe we should go to Wilmer first in 2015 to see that emotion from him, and then we'll go to Vientos. So Marsh, our engineer, producer, play that Wilmer Flores walk-off from July of 2015.
Count is low. Flores drives it. Deep left center field. Taylor back. Near the wall. It's out of here! Flores ends it with a home run! Wilmer Flores night at Citi Field comes to a fitting close, and the Mets win it 2-1 in 12. Two nights ago, he thought he was traded. In tears on the field, he gets his 4th standing ovation of the night as he ends it with a long ball.
And maybe tears of joy now. The trade that wasn't made might be the biggest hit for the Mets all season.
Amazing. Terry, that's got to bring back memories for you, right?
It sure does. It's what an incredible moment. I mean, it captivated one of the craziest weeks I've ever spent. So
yeah, look at Murphy
jumping
up and
down. A better guy.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
All right, March. That was 2015, and this young man, Mark Vientos, one of the top prospects for the Mets organization, disappointed to be sent down to the minor leagues, comes up, finally gets his chance, and in the 11th inning of Sunday's game, this is what happened.
For the ninth. Fly ball, center field. Back goes Ciani to the warning track. Back at the wall. It's out of here! Mark Vientos wins the game for New York with a 2-run homer! Mark Vientos back in the big leagues with a bang! A 2-run homer in the bottom of the 11th! And the Mets win it 4-2! That is a whole lot of pent-up frustration leaving the body of Mark Vientos. Sent back to the minor leagues despite a great spring. Came up yesterday, got a hit. Off the bench today. A base hit his first time up and a 2-run homer to win it in the bottom of the 11th after the Mets had been down to their final strike. And the Mets pull one out against the Cardinals with 3 in the bottom of the 11th, capped by Mark Vientos' towering home run.
2 strikes on Vientos, 2 strikes on Bader, and Liberatore couldn't put it away.
You gotta feel so good for Mark Vientos. Brought up last year, didn't play quite as much as
All right,
you would have expected.
that was amazing to watch. And Terry, I mean, 9 years ago, Flores, and now Vientos. Do you see a comparison there? And what do you think?
Well, it's a little early on with Wilmer's was late in the summer, huge, right? We're right after the trading deadline. I mean, a huge impact for us as we were all of a sudden making that run. But here the Mets are, they've had a little bit of a rough week. Even though they played 500 in California, they came home, they lose two of the first 2 games in this series against the Cardinals. Big home run, but it's a bigger home run for Mark Vientos. Here's a guy who went to the minor leagues, and a lot of times, John, when you get sent back down, you're frustrated, you're upset, you're frustrated, and you can get off to a horrible start. You know what? He went down, he said, I belong up there, and I'm going to show them they made a mistake. And he went down, and he played great offensive start. He came up, and now here's his opportunity. And, you're going to hear Dan Murphy talk about it. Every so often you get opportunities, and you got to make the most of them. Anybody could have been in that lineup, but Mark Vientos was in that spot, and you know what? He's come through, and it's going to change everything how he looks at the game. His confidence in whether or not he can play there, the confidence his teammates have, his manager has, his hitting coaches have. It's just a huge home run for him.
It is, and in the post game, he said it was the best feeling he's ever had in his life. So we congratulate him. And now the Mets have a tough decision when Marte gets back from bereavement. What are they going to do? So I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, those are the fun decisions. Even though they're hard, they're fun because you know what? You've got to pick 2 good. You have 2 options, and sometimes you can't go wrong.
Yeah. Well, finally, Terry, we're entering May. First month of the season's over. What's your evaluation of the New York Mets right now after the first month?
Well, obviously, getting off to an 0-5 start, they battled back and got themselves over 500. You know what? We got a long, long way to go, but they still, they have battled back. They've kept themselves in games. Obviously, that we got to get, we got to keep away from the injuries to our pitching staff. Bullpen stepped up. Garrett has been unbelievable. Diaz has been great. We got a couple injuries to some guys. Got to get Rayleigh back and Smith back. But you know what? Again, it's next man up. And that's what you and I have talked, John. Nobody in baseball feels sorry for you. So what you got to do, you got to find someone else who could come up and fill those little bitty roles those situations where, hey, we got to get a couple outs here so we can get to the next guy. And, I think they'll find that guy because they went out and got some depth this past winter.
Yeah. So coming into May, we're hopefully we'll be hitting a stride. So we can't wait to keep watching this season unfold. It's given some Metfield some thrills already, especially with the Vientos walk-off, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more of those memories coming up. Terry, this week in Mets history, April 24th, 1962, Mets manager Casey Stengel was fined $500 by Baseball Commissioner Ford Frick for appearing in a Rheingold beer advertisement while wearing a Mets uniform. And on April 25th, 2015, after beating the Braves 6-3, the Mets tied their franchise record, winning 11 games in a row, giving them a record of 13-3. And I think you remember that season in 2015.
Yeah, I sure do. And that's, again, the streaks are great, but, you go back to Casey, Casey was kind of like the grandfather of baseball at the time. So I'm sure that $500, I'm sure the team ended up picking that up for him, because that's a huge advertisement, especially in 62 when they weren't very good. To have their uniform on TV for an advertisement was probably big for everybody.
Yeah, now $500 was probably a lot of money back then.
A lot of money back then. Yeah, you bet.
Did you ever appear in any commercials during your tenure as Mets manager?
Well, I don't know if, we actually, Joe Girardi and I did a Dunkin' Donuts commercial in New York. He had one type of coffee, I had another, and we argued about which was the better. And at the end of it, Joe said, well, we'll find out who's better on the field next week. So kind of a thing, but it was a lot of fun. And we had full life-size posters in Dunkin' Donuts stores for 2 months after we did the commercial.
Very, very cool. Great branding for both the Mets and the Yankees at that time. Well, Terry, we appreciate it very much. And now it's time for Talking with TC. And now it's time for Talking with TC, and a very special segment today. Our guest this week, a beloved member of the New York Mets alumni. He had one of the greatest individual postseasons in Major League Baseball history in 2015, when he hit a home run in 6 consecutive games, breaking the record set by Carlos Beltran, and became the second person ever, following the immortal Lou Gehrig, to have a hit, score a run, and an RBI in 7 consecutive postseason games. That year, he broke Mike Piazza's record for most home runs in Mets franchise history in the postseason. He was the 2015 NLCS MVP, a 3-time All-Star, 2-time Silver Slugger Award winner, and someone who will always have a special place in every Mets fan's heart. Let's bring on Daniel Murphy. Daniel, how you doing?
I'm doing well, John. Thank you. That was a humbling introduction. I appreciate it. Hey, Skip, how you doing?
Hi, Murph. Thanks for coming on. And I was telling these guys when we were trying to pick people to be on, I said, well, one of the guys I've got to have on is Dan Murphy. And I was telling them the story. When I first ran into you, when I was the field coordinator here, we opened up our camp, in January. And remember when Keith came out and it was Keith Hernandez and put on a demo or talk about playing first base. Mm-hmm. You weren't sure if you were going to be at first or at outfield or where it was going to be. And I remember the first thing after the first day after Keith was talking, you came to me and you said, hey, I came here to do some work. Mm-hmm. Are we going to do some work? Or are we going to listen? And I never forgot it. Never ever forgot it. And then that summer at the end of spring training, you got hurt. And when I would come down to St. Lucie to go watch the clubs and the rookie club or the A club here, who's always sitting out there watching the game? Daniel Murphy, who never missed a day rehabbing his knee injury, and just sit there and watch the game and talked about the game. And I said, this guy's a baseball player. I'm going to find a spot on this team for me. He's going to play for me. So thanks for coming on the show. We're really excited to have you on.
Well, Skip, thank you for having me. And as you say that, the further I get away from playing, the more I appreciate and can say sincerely thank you, because to have advocates like you to basically, want me on your ball club even after getting banged up like that, they can give these at bats to anyone and this playing time to anyone. And I'm humbled that you took me north with you and we got to do this together, because I remember, Mex was down there in camp that year And like he was talking about first base, and he probably got into maybe a couple minutes of it, and I thought, we're playing a different game. Like he's so much better over here than where I am right now. And he was just the nuances he was talking about, and I was kind of like, I need to start with like tackling this thing, securing it, and getting it over the pitcher who's covering. But he was, yeah, it was fun to talk to him about that. But it gave me a real appreciation that I came to you and said the work. Like if I'm going to get nearly in the, not even in the class of Keith, but to be able to play this position the way he's talking about, I'm gonna need to take some ground balls over here, and somebody's gonna need to start wailing away at me. So, no, I remember that year, and again, sincerely, Skip, thank you, because like, well, they're hard at bats.
Thanks, and you know what I mean? One of the things. Yeah, well, first of all, we all knew you were going to hit. I mean, that was one of the first things I heard when I came to the Mets was, asking about guys in camps, and they all talked about this guy can really hit. We just got to find a place for him to play, and certainly first
still looking,
base was,
Skipper, still looking.
I will tell you this, Dan, and I'll tell you that. I'll tell these people, our fans, another story. When I asked you to go to second base and you never hesitated, you said, okay. And again, you started taking ground balls there. And every day, I used to see it every day. We'd be walk off the field in spring training. And years ago, John, the batting machines used to have what they called the Iron Mike, which was a long, stiff-armed batting machine that threw. And in the cage, Dan used Iron Mike to learn how to transfer the ball, turn in double plays, his footwork every day in the cage. He would do it so he could get better at second base. And he became a darn good second baseman, and of course, the bat played, but you know what? I could tell you 100 times the plays he'd made to save us playing second base, and he got really, really good out there.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Skip. Well,
you remember that, Dan? Turning those double plays?
That was in 2011. That was coming off the year where I had gone to turn a double play in Buffalo and got walloped and didn't protect myself. So I thought, rule number one, I need to be able to get this thing out of my hands after we secure an out so I don't get myself killed. And I was like, well, where can I go? I was like, well, stick a quarter in that Iron Mike machine and I'll just try. I can't get worse. I already got. And so, yeah, I remember going in there, but it worked out perfect because I could change the cadence of it. I could make it a little quicker. And so I guess, yeah, however bad I still was, it wasn't for lack of effort. Cause I really learned a lot at second base. Cause just the way the game is played, the offensive team is coming in there and these outs are so precious that I don't blame anyone for coming in there legally to try to get you and bust this double play up. Like that's an extra swing and turn at bat that we get. And so if I don't put myself in a position to be protected, like that's on me. I know what's going on around this bag. So when we got to camp in 11, I was like, I ain't getting tackled again. You know what I mean? That's just not going to happen.
Yeah. And that's obviously where the game has changed today, but I can attest to the fact, playing second base years ago, man, you better get the ball in the air and you better get it headed to first base because they're going to get you.
Yeah.
And the more those feet are on the ground, the more dangerous it is for that second baseman. So, but just to watch, Dan, again, when you're coming from where I came from, and I grew up pretty much most of my time as a development guy, and to see a guy who's a major league player on his, naturally to switch a position and yet work so hard to say, hey, look, if I'm going to play here, I'm going to get better at it. I'm just not going to let my bat carry. I'm going to, I know there's two sides of the ball here. So I'm going to go out there and I'm going to be a usable guy at second base. And I just thought, I applauded the fact that you worked so hard at it, on a daily basis.
Well, those pitchers are working hard, you know what I mean? And so, I watch baseball now, and this is just a little funny one, but in the big leagues, when there's a routine play hit and the infielder misplays it, I gasp a little bit. I'd probably give a picture into what I did on defense anyway. But when a ball doesn't get secured in the big leagues that's meant to be made an out, it kind of startles you a little bit because you can feel like this inning is off schedule now. Now this pitcher who's done his job, I haven't helped him out. Now I got to ask him to do something. Now they do it and they go hard, but when they get outs, I wanted those routine plays. Those outs are so valuable. And so, that's what I tried to do on defense.
Yeah. And John, one of the other things people don't realize, when David got hurt, I moved Murph from second. Here I asked him to go play second base. And then a year later, David gets hurt. And I asked Dan, hey, look, I'm going to put you at third. And we didn't miss a beat. He went over there, played his butt off at third base. And, there were times I'd put him at first, played great at first base. So, everybody teases, once in a while they'll make a joke about Murph's defense. Let me tell you something. This guy played all over the field and did whatever I asked him to do, never complained, showed up every day. And one of the things I always remember was talking about the general manager one day, and I said, I'll tell you one thing about Murph. When you come to the ballpark, you know exactly what you're getting, and that's max effort. And I said, I know how he's going to approach it. I know what kind of a teammate he is. A lot of times I was always afraid because, you were on those umpires pretty good, man, from that bench because you knew hitting.
I was
pretty
a
well.
petulant child.
I was always afraid because he backed up every teammate on every at bat. He wasn't one of those guys who went out, played second, got his at bat, went in, had a cup of coffee when he wasn't coming up. Not him. He was on the top step watching the game, and I'll tell you what, he was a beloved teammate in that clubhouse.
Well, Skip, you created that. Yeah, you created that environment, though. Like it was easy to just go out there and play hard for you for just the atmosphere that we had in the clubhouse, and also you took the pressure off. Like you cut the lineup. I just get to go play freely for you, and so if it's at second, at first, at third, wherever it is in the lineup, like I always figured that's not going to help me get base hits and make plays. You know what I mean? Wherever the skipper puts me, he's trying to do what's best for us, and we're trying to win games, and I'll go out there and have a bit of fun and play. And so, yeah.
John, you got questions for Dan?
Oh, I got some questions for Dan for sure. When you're talking about the versatility and all the different positions that you played seamlessly, Dan, was there any one position that you kind of preferred over another, or did you just want to play for your skipper and do whatever he wanted you to do and play wherever he wanted you to play?
Well, first, both. But my preference would be first base. You get a bigger glove, and then also growing up in like when the senior circuit had pitchers hitting, like if you're aggressive, you can take some outs from the opposing team. If you get up in there on that pitcher and if you're willing to get in there and stick your nose in there on some bunts, you can take the lead runner out. And I love doing that from first base. I would just go out there slinging the ball all over the place trying to get a lead runner. So that I would say at first base, since it's defense, I had somewhat of the temperament to be defensive. But then like my wife, Tori, she was a pitcher, but she's on defense. But she doesn't retreat. She plays defense on the front foot. And on first base, it was one of the few places on the diamond that I feel like I could get on the front foot. It gave me that giant glove too as well. You know what I mean? It's like a big old butterfly net over there. And so I would just kind of air it out at first base. So that was the position I enjoyed the most.
You were such a beloved player for the Mets organization. I mean, that 2015 season was so magical in so many different ways. And you can never stop watching those highlights and how passionate you were, how emotional you were. That season will always stand out. The postseason, incredible. What were your greatest memories of that 2015 season that was so magical for everybody in New York?
I'd say an interesting start to it was because I got banged up that year in Arizona, and I felt so bad because I think we had a night game the day before, maybe in San Francisco, gotten in late to Arizona, and I could kind of feel something warming up. And I should have been able to put the governor on it enough to get through the ball game, but anyway, I ended up getting down the line, and I felt something go, and I went to the skipper, and I whispered in his ear, I said, "Skip, I got my quad." You know what I mean? And so I'm gone now, end up being like 3 weeks. But one of the cool things was, never being hurt, but John Neese and his wife, they provided their home in St. Lucie, and we had just had Noah. And so Tori and I kind of got to be this family in a unique way where it was rehab in St. Lucie, home for the afternoon, and kind of get to be dad. So by the time I came back, I mean, I always was, but I was like buzzing. I think we played the Cubs when we first got back, and Kyle Hendricks was throwing, and we ended up winning that ball game. So one of the memories I have is, I think probably a bit selfishly, I had more energy maybe later in the year because of this being hurt early in the year and get to spend this time with my family. And then the events around Flo, and the trade deadline, you talk about just the atmosphere, like Wilmer Flores and I in Tejada, like I met these guys when they're 16 years old. Like we're doing instructs together. I'm, not an old man, but coming from college, I'm 21, and here we got these guys that come in. And so we had done life together throughout the minor leagues. Like, this had been years in the making. And to see Flo so, well, obviously emotional, but just this love you felt like that you knew he had for this organization, the only one he knew. And then he ends up staying, and he ends up hitting the homer. And then we get Cess, who doesn't get out like the entire rest of the season, almost wins the MVP playing on the senior circuit for 2 months. And then so that's another one. And then, I just remember playing the Nationals and just kind of feeling like we were turning that tide. David scores in DC and he gives the fist pump, and you're like, oh, this feels different. This feels different. Even another one, Skip, you remember this when we swept DC at our place on the Sunday night game, and then we went down to Miami and that lull you to sleep aquarium they got down there, which I didn't mind going down there, but you gotta get up for these ball games. And Michael Conforto went down there and kind of took that series over a little bit for us, and it reminded me of like when those younger guys come in, they're so hungry and so focused. And then from there we end up getting into the postseason. One last thing, not last thing I remember, but heading into the postseason, I remember because the three teams in the Central had 100 wins, but they ended up being wild card teams because they didn't win their division. And I remember people were somewhat up in arms because we weren't a wild card team. Let's win your division. You know what I mean? So I remember that in Baltimore.
Yeah, I hear you.
You know what I mean? And then heading into the postseason, kind of with playing the Dodgers, that was.
Dan, one of the questions I get a lot of times doing this show, or I do some stuff with SNY. I get the question of, how'd you feel when all of a sudden, in 2015 you made the deal for Cespedes? And I said, it wasn't just Cespedes.
Yes.
When Uribe showed up, Kelly Johnson, Addison Reed, Tyler Clippard. My question now is, I know how I felt. What impact in the clubhouse? You were in there every day. What impact did the other guys have when those kind of deals were being made?
I'd say first, like to answer that first, and then I'll come back to huge impact. But do you remember the meeting you had with us? It's like me, Flo, Duda, Ruben. And it was kind of like, fellas, we got some players coming in, some proper major league players. And wouldn't say this hasn't been a meritocracy to this point in the years that you've been in the big leagues, but best man plays now. And I was like, well, it's time to get, you know what I mean? And so I remember you calling us in there and just putting us on notice. We're all trying to get to the same place, but if you don't play, then you're going to do it from the bench, basically is what I took from it. And then when Cess comes in, he played every day. He just stick a quarter in him. I remember you tried to give him a day off. You'd try every now and then to give him one, and he'd tell you no because we were locker mates. And I was like, my goodness, this guy just goes all the time. And Addison and Clippard were these stabilizing pieces and players in the bullpen. And Kelly and Juan were so much more professional than I could have ever expected. Guys that had been through regular seasons, number of years, been into the postseason, and they just each at bat that they would take, they took it as if they had been there before. I mean, Kelly Johnson, when he hits the big homer in DC, if I'm not mistaken, I think he cracked a big one for us. Yep. I was at the same game. Did Kurt Neuenhuis as well too? I don't know. Did he? I might have dreamed that, but like they were professionals, and not to say that we weren't a team of professionals already, but they raised the level and of the intent going forward. And then also you couldn't help but just feel the front office put this seal of we believe in you. Let's go. Like here is all the help that we can get you. Go sprint through the finish line as fast as you can and as hard as you can go. So that's what I think of the trade deadline. And then now, I mean, it was the first time we had gone through it, at least I have, in making additions. And it really, I would say, stayed with me and impacted me at how important I believe trade deadline acquisitions are when you're there. Like, I think it's massive when you see major league players come into the clubhouse and you're like, okay, this is the no messing about time of the year because we got proper major leaguers in here. Let's go.
I wanted to follow up with you on what you brought up, some of your greatest memories. I will never forget Wilmer Flores when he hit that game-winning home run. That night that will be remembered forever. It looked like when you got out of the dugout, it was like you were walking on air. I mean, the way you were twisting and turning, and the elation, and meeting Wilmer at home plate. One of the most indelible memories that I'll ever have as a Mets fan, watching a celebration like that. So that was really, really magical. And I'm going to segue into something that that really hurt a lot of Met fans is when you left. I mean, after the great season you have, after the great postseason you have, uh, does it kind of bother you to this day that the Mets didn't extend you or give you a multi-year deal to kind of show their appreciation for all the wonderful things you did for the organization, especially that year, and how beloved you are from the fans, or is it just kind of a business?
No, it doesn't bother me at all. I mean, in the sense that I would have enjoyed staying, but I didn't feel that me leaving and going on to another organization ever felt malevolent in its nature. So I've been kind of reading about the dead ball, and was listening to it last night, and Hans Lobert, I think, is playing for the Pirates, but he ends up getting a base hit off of one of his best friends that looks like it's going to cost the Cubs the pennant in 1908. And Hans's ball club is out of it, and they're talking as they walk off the field to the clubhouse, and Hans is apologizing. I would have given up my year's salary to not get that hit, and I forget his friend's name now. But he says, it's all part of the game, and it is. It's not malicious in nature. And also at the same time, like, we got a qualifying offer too. Like, we were extended a qualifying offer that my wife and I and our family with Aces and Seth Levinson decided that it was in our best interest to decline the qualifying offer in an effort to find a multi-year deal. And then as the offseason unfolded, Sandy and Terry, you guys bring in two great players, Neil Walker and Asdrubal Cabrera. It didn't feel like that was a directed attack at me, other than there are two good players available that the Mets acquired. And also at the same time, I did think it's going to be difficult for me to find a place to play there. And then, now I'm looking for a job, because that was also a place where there would have been some work. And, we get to around Jesus's birthday, and baseball players want jobs. I'm no different than anyone else.
Yeah, it was sad for the Mets because we loved you. I mean, that was the day to this day. And then when in August 2022, you took part at the first Mets Old Timers game since 1994, and you got such a great reaction being back in the uniform at Citi Field. Did that give you kind of an itch, like maybe I should, try this again? And that's when you got signed by the Long Island Ducks. Did that have any correlation?
I would say that first, Steve Cohen and Alex Cohen did a wonderful job. I had an absolute blast at the Old Timers Day. I didn't necessarily think it at the time when I went to go play again last year, but I would say it would be naive of me to think that going into New York, back to New York, and putting on the uniform again didn't bubble something up within me, because it was no more than a couple months later that I kind of went on this adventure of observing and studying the swing, but with a different set of eyeballs. And so that was, along with playing in the Old Timers game, kind of, I think, spurred me forward. And so, I just started consuming my baseball differently, and I started kind of learning that, like, Ted Williams and Babe Ruth and Willie Mays, they didn't take in and learn baseball the same way I learned baseball. They learned baseball in the sandlots, unsupervised, with the freedom to express and create however they saw fit. And that's not to say there's not a place for drills, you know what I mean? Because we want to get sharp, but we do drills in the Army, and they're children, and I think that they would probably prefer to just play. And I think that the guys from the turn of the century through Ted Williams, they just move differently than me. And another thing that really spurred my interest in it was how I got injured. Like, I had a knee surgery, a microfracture surgery, and I had my knee injuries, but to have the joint wear away from swinging fundamentally a stick and throwing a stone seemed like maybe I wasn't doing it as properly or as optimally as I could for long-term health. And then I go and watch Ted Williams, and I'm like, oh, I don't swing like him. He has a different movement. But children get in the same positions that Ted Williams and Babe Ruth do. So all this to come together that I was moving just fast enough, I felt like, to get fired in spring training last season. And I couldn't find a job in camp with anyone. And so Wally gave me a gig up in Long Island. And I was like, yeah, I want to try this stuff out. And really, honestly, as free play, it's the best way I can describe it. It was the first time in a bit that I remember not chasing, like, in some capacity, like the bag, you know what I mean? Finances. And so watching kids play and then getting my own opportunity. And a lot of that has to do with the blessings that I and my family have received from baseball. Like, I could just go on this summer vacation, and my wife's a rock star because it was a massive amount on her. We got 4 kids. We snuck another one in on you, Skipper. We got 18-month-old. So there's 4 of them now.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but I really just went and free played the way that, Noah, my oldest son, does in extended after school. Like, he just goes and plays. And so that's kind of what I did. And I've really re-fallen in love with baseball. It's so American. It's our game, and it's 2 heavyweight fighters going at each other from 60 feet away, and then all hell breaks loose. And, like, I love it because you can overpower it. You can play a scientific game. Like, there's all sorts of games that you can play, and yeah, it's the best.
Great.
Dan, one of the things that amazed me, I mean, we all knew you had bat-to-ball skills. Everybody knew that. But before the playoffs, towards the end of 2015, when Kevin and Pat got together, Kevin Long and Pat Bressler got together, and you altered, they brought up the fact, hey, when you hit the ball in the air, you do huge damage. Was it easy for you to say, you know what? Yeah, I can do that. You know what? I'm just going to start hitting more fly balls. I mean, because that's what it looked like from the side. You just said, well, I have the ability to hit the ball. So I'm going to, I'm going to change my swing a little bit, and I'm going to get the ball in the air more. And obviously, the next 4 or 5 years, you were an absolute dynamite, not just a hitter, but a power hitter.
Yeah, I wouldn't ever say that it was easy. What I think that Kevin and Pat did was they were so observant, and I had such a great relationship with both of them that when they would come and tell me something, I could feel that they were doing it from this investment that they had taken in me and our ball club and everyone else. And so Sticks and K-Long kind of basically sat me down and explained to me, like, you have a unique skill. It's accuracy. Like, I don't swing and miss a lot. It's like, okay, if you swing at bad balls, that's going to be a problem because you're going to make very weak contact. But if we'll tighten your zone up, we're going to scoot up on the plate. And now when you go to swing, and what Kevin did really, and Pat, is they took the governor off of me. They said, pull, go, pull. And so I would equate it to, like, we were talking about golf a little bit, I think all fair. But if I think of the batter's box like a tee box, all right? So staying inside the ball and hitting a fade, you know what I mean? That's going to be hit not as hard as the draw, and I'm going to take on the big carry. So now I'm going to move the ball right to left and hit a fade, and I got to hit it to the biggest part of the ballpark. What Kevin basically said is hit the draw, you know what I mean? Hit the draw and take the shortcut. And so I would kind of start looking at, if you look at the construction of the field, and this is what I've really started enjoying when I talk to my son's team, is I'll tell them to pick an outfielder. Play against your favorite out. There's only 3 of them out there. Look at all the space they have to cover. I don't want any of these infielders to catch my batted balls. The pitcher either, and I got the sneaky sucker behind me trying to take stuff as well too, the catcher. So you have all this area defended, and basically Kevin was like, play against the right fielder and the center fielder. And then I was accurate, and he goes, let it eat. We'll sort it out. You know what I mean? And I was very fortunate in that about one of the first games or 2 that we did this, and we had this talk, we faced Jordan Zimmerman in the Sunday night game. And Jordan was a better matchup for me because he is a strike thrower. And so I'm good against strike throwers. If you throw me bad balls, I didn't like to walk much. And then, because I like to swing and I'd be accurate. But like Jordan, he'd meet you right in the zone. And I was like, oh, perfect. I'll try to beat you there if I can. And I end up hitting a home run off of him. And I was like, oof, that felt good. And it really felt more like this release and this freedom that I would probably say that I try to give and teach to kids now is like, swing as hard as you can. Throw the biggest punch you have. I don't want to give you a smaller punch for the sake of accuracy. Let's work on your biggest punch and we'll make that one more accurate. And then the scoreboard will tell you when you need to throw a smaller accurate punch and when you get to throw a big kind of accurate punch. And so that's what I feel like Kevin and Pat allowed me to do. And yeah, I got some reward for it early, and then you just kind of ride the wave. You know what I mean? That's what Pat Rosser used to say. I'd want to come in and mess with something, and he would just be like, Murph, ride the wave. Just ride the wave. And so, yeah, those guys made coming into the office fun. I mean, coming into work in the cages, it was just great fun. We were hunting. That's what Kadir basically used to explain it. Like, we're out here hunting you. There's nowhere to breathe. If it ain't Sess, it'll be David. If it ain't David, it'll be Duda. If it ain't Duda, I'll sneak up on you. You know what I mean? Somebody's going to get you.
Yeah. So, John, I know the fans have some questions for Murph. You got them with you?
Oh, yeah, I certainly do. But before we get to them, I had one last question for you, Dan. We heard you over the spring announcing a couple of games for SNY. Is that something you see yourself doing more of in the future, is announcing?
Yeah, I think that I may get asked to do it again, and I would like to. I did enjoy it. It was a unique perspective, and I was kind of getting used to it from watching it. I've never been that far away from the strike zone, but needed to pay very much attention to what's going on the field, if that makes sense. So all of my focus is usually on the strike zone. And so, because I think it's just a fight over that real estate. I think Sandy Alderson was absolutely right in recognizing this game as a fight over the strike zone. It's the most important real estate in our game. And so it did take me a bit of getting used to, but to be able to work with Gary and Ron and how graciously they treated me, I couldn't have asked for a better introduction into the industry. And so I didn't love it when I kind of rewound it and listened to it, but I think everybody's probably that way in some capacity. I hope the fans, I was able to give them something unique. I was definitely nervous my first time doing it, but I do look forward to hopefully doing it again.
It gets easier every time you do it. You know,
Reps.
I rewind every show that we do, and I'm like, I should have said this better or that better. But yeah, I enjoyed it personally to see you in the booth there. All right, we'll get to the fans' questions. We had questions that came in from not only Instagram and Facebook and X. So I got a few of them that I've picked out here. So the first one really kind of segues into a previous question. It's from Edwin Perez, and we got this on the Terry Collins Show page on Facebook. Would Murph ever consider coaching or managing in the big leagues?
I would consider definitely coaching. Skip, I have so much appreciation for you in the managing. I wouldn't say that I think I could be a hitting coach right now, but I'd have a much better chance of being a hitting coach than I could a manager. There's so many things that you have authority over and so much responsibility that a manager takes on that it seems overwhelming thinking about it right now. But the idea of showing up to the ballpark every day and talking about the opposing pitcher and formulating a plan at how best to attack him, like, yes, that sounds like it would be great fun. The biggest deterrent I would say is my wife and children, being able to be present for them. But it is something that I get my hitting fix by watching my boys and the rest of the kids they play with. But I do very much enjoy getting ready for an opposing pitcher.
We got another one that came in, this time from X, formerly Twitter. Patty in New York City, Patty in NYC. With your amazing 2015 postseason and then being a runner-up for the MVP in 2016, can you compare those two seasons, and did you enjoy one more than the other?
No, I would say one more enjoyed them both in different ways. The one in the 2015 season in New York really was this not crowning because we didn't win it all, but when I think back of it, well, we won a pennant. I don't think that pennant Well, and following John McGraw and the turn of the century, those pennants are a big deal. So I'm gonna hold on to that, Skipper. We got our pennant. But the 2015 season just felt like to me this kind of graduation of a core group of players and men that I had come up with. Like I played winter ball with Lucas Duda in 2008, I think, or 7 in Hawaii. And I'd already mentioned that Wilmer Flores and Ruben Tejada I think we were in our first instructs. Yuri's Familia, like Bobby Parnell, I came up with him and Nice. And so, and then, David is waiting for us in the big leagues to teach us what it looks like to be a professional major league player and to go out your business. So like to get that far, unfortunately not to win the World Series, but that is so special because of the relationships that had been built going into it. And then selfishly, from a regular season perspective, it was great fun to get that many hits in 2016. For someone who's looking to get as many hits as they will give you, that was fun. And a bit unique in the sense that not that we didn't enjoy New York, it was just different that we purchased a home in Alexandria as our family was growing. So it was the first time on a multi-year deal. And that's not to say that like I didn't appreciate singing for my supper. Like that's part of the game. You know what I mean? You work on 1-year deals, and then if you are blessed, and we were to get a multi-year deal, we did, and we're able to get a home. So that was a unique experience in DC. But the relationships that my wife and I built in New York over the decade that we were there will stand the test of time. That run deep.
Well, we got one more, and this one is from Instagram, and Super Beavers asks, can you compare the fan bases in the different cities that you'd played in? Is there any particular favorite? Mm-hmm. And what city would that be?
You can feel the richness and the history of baseball in New York. It's undeniable. I mean, the Elysian Fields are a couple miles from Queens. I mean, the game was born there in New York, and you can feel it. In DC is probably a bit different in the sense that that's not the same ball club that was there at the turn of the century. They've had some team leave and then come back, and then somewhat adding into the transient sort of nature of the era in DC and the turnover that happens every couple of years. But very passionate fans when they come out, but just more fans that you would run into that haven't always been Washington Nationals fans because they may have grown up somewhere else. But like, if you love National League Baseball in New York, then you love National League Baseball in New York, like you were born into that. So Chicago, I was there for 2 months in a pennant race, and the day games there were unique to do all the time. I enjoyed that as well too. And then for the fans to come out, and then actually I just saw the Chicago's heading into New York to open up a series with the Mets, and it made me think about us hooking up with them in 15 and then playing there. And then I will say that in Denver, finally, like they were a fan base that came. Speaking of myself personally, I didn't always provide a very good product for them. I wasn't very productive, but they still came out to watch. And so, but New York, you can feel that is the capital of baseball, in my opinion.
Got it. We really appreciate it. And finally, I'm going to throw it back to Terry, but you could just see the mutual admiration between the skipper and the player. So this relationship, this bond that you've two developed with each other is very everlasting. So it's wonderful to see you interact with each other. And we want to thank you, Dan.
Well, yeah, Dan, I got to thank you again for coming on. I just want to tell you, you watch it sometimes, you watch enough movies and TVs, and there's always a phrase, where, the game needs Dan Murphy. Major League Baseball needs Dan Murphy. They need the passion. They need the baseball player in you, to keep this going and to keep those young players that are coming up today. They need to be reminded about how special the game is and what it provides. And, and I think, hopefully you stay on the field in some capacity. I know you're a tremendous father, and you want to see your kids grow. And I certainly understand that, but when the time is right, I hope you get back on the field and provide all of those things that you just got done talking about here for 30 minutes. And because it makes an impact. It made an impact on me the first time I ever met you. And, and I love baseball. And so, I think the difference that you can make on some young guys coming up would be huge. So good luck. And thanks again for being on. And I missed I miss having conversations. This was a great one.
Oh, Skip, I love the ball talk. And again, I really cannot thank you so much for the opportunity you provide me and our family. Like, you could have given those reps to anyone, and I thank you that you gave us a chance at them. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Dan, and thanks for being on today.
All right, Skip.
What an outstanding individual. Not just hearing his stories about baseball, but hearing his stories about his family. And what a great segment with Daniel Murphy.
I agree, John. He's a special person, great human being, one of the, great family men there was. And, he's got a lot to add. He has a lot to bring, his passion for the game, his knowledge of how to play the game correctly. And I'm going to tell you, nobody played it harder. When in preparation and got it ready. And I'm telling you, he went there. Don't let him kid you. There were a lot of nights he went out there and he was running on thin air, boy. Because he played so hard and he had such passion for it. But, it's pretty funny, he didn't bring it up. But, in today's game, everybody's worried about nutrition. Dan Murphy ate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches before every game 162 times. And now they can't even have peanut butter in the clubhouse. So it tells you that, the game has changed, but Dan's one of the best.
Yeah, he was. I thoroughly enjoyed that one. And Terry, now it's time to get some questions from the fans. We got a couple of them this week. And here's one. It comes from our Facebook fan page. This one is from Big Mike from Long Island. Citi Field has been named 2024's best ballpark food by USA Today's Reader's Choice. Terry, what is your go-to ballpark food?
Hot dogs. I mean, you can't go to a ballpark without having a hot dog. I don't think I've ever been to a game where I've ever eaten food at a game that I didn't get a hot dog. So, and I know I've heard all about all the great food at Citi Field. Guys used to send the clubhouse guys up to, get hamburgers and pieces of pizza and some of the other stuff that's at the stadium. But if I'm going to go to a ball game, I'm having a good hot dog.
Yeah, exactly. I love those vendors at Citi Field as well, and I love those Nathan dogs, believe me, with some kraut and a soda. All right, next question, final question. This one comes from Instagram. Tommy D from West Islip. Over your career, who was the most memorable character you managed in your baseball career?
Wow.
I'm sure there are a lot of them, but
that is, the most memorable character. That I will tell you, one of the guys that we had in New York who was always behind I had two. I will tell you, there was two because I had one in Houston. Luis Gonzalez in Houston was one of the best pranksters I've ever been around. He didn't let any money get in the way of a good prank. I mean, he took one of my coach's cars and put all flashing lights on it during a game one night. And he came out and got in his car, and the lights were flashing, and they had blue lights underneath it, and they had it was crazy going. And then I'll tell you, Justin Turner, one of the fun-loving guys in the clubhouse, had a great time. He's the one who put all the pies in guys' faces all the time, and there was always something going. Justin always had something fun to do with the guys.
Well, thank you, Terry, for that. And if you want to ask a question for Terry, send us an email or respond on social media when we ask for those questions. Send your email to the Terry Collins Show at gmail.com. And of course, you can follow Terry on X and Instagram at Terry Collins _10. And for those of you on Facebook, we do have that page open. It's doing really well in the first few weeks. So follow Terry there, simply at the Terry Collins Show. And that's going to wrap it up for this week, Terry. Next week, we understand you have not one but two special guests to talk about the state of pitching in baseball today.
Yeah, I'm going to bring on two guys. John, I've had all my years in baseball, I've had some great pitching coaches, and I'm bringing on two of them to talk about the situation with pitching. One is Dave Wallace, who's a longtime pitching coach for the Red Sox, the Dodgers, the Atlanta Braves. He ran the Atlanta Braves minor league pitching for a long time. And another was Dan Wharton, who was my pitching coach in New York, who really was responsible for the, blossoming of Jake DeGrom, Noah Syndergaard, Steven Matz, Zach Wheeler, Matt Harvey. Jeurys Familia, and those guys. And I want to hear their take on what they feel, is the cause of all of these injuries that are happening to pitchers today, because we didn't see this years ago, and we still had guys that threw hard. So I think it's going to be a great discussion.
Yeah, very timely, of course, with everything that's going on in pitching in the big leagues today, and even as these kids are being trained. Thank you, Terry. Make sure you subscribe now to the Terry Collins Show, wherever you listen to it on your favorite podcast platform. Of course, the YouTube channel as well. So it's you can find Terry everywhere. And don't forget, subscribe to the show, because you will get notified when a new episode airs. Till next week, when we bring on those great guests that Terry is going to be bringing on to talk about pitching. This is John Arezzi for Terry Collins. Let's go Mets.